Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who appreciates his mom commenting on Sports Geek posts, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. I'm Sean Callanan, and welcome to episode 398 of Sports Geek. This week, I chat with Mya Doelling. She's the Senior Partnerships Manager, Purpose Partnership Lead at the International Olympic Committee, otherwise known as the IOC. Really do appreciate you taking the time to listen to the podcast. You could be doing so at our website, sportsgeekhq.com. That's where every single episode is. And I'd love you to check out the throwback episodes, where we've been sharing each week a short highlight from the Sports Geek archive. It's a great way to dive back into the archive. Nearly 400 episodes in that archive, and great guests among them. The other thing I want to ask, are you following Sports Geek on LinkedIn? I would really appreciate it. LinkedIn Pages is having a little bit of a renaissance. I think it is part of some of the changes that are happening with LinkedIn. We're putting in some effort into our LinkedIn page, and really, you should also do so with your team pages. I think it's becoming a valuable channel to talk to business segment. So yes, if you could follow Sports Geek on LinkedIn, that would be terrific. We share all the episodes there, and we also share some sports business news and some extra snippets from these episodes. It's a great way to connect with our content and our guests. As always, you can contact me at Sean Callanan on most social platforms, or you can reach out to me old-fashioned way, email sean@sportsgeekhq.com. If you've listened to the podcast for ages, and you think potentially I might be able to help you, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to figure out if I can. I love working with podcast listeners, whether that's helping you with solving problems in your digital, understanding what you should be doing going forward, tackling new platforms or new strategies or new audiences, how we apply digital to dollars, or some of the stuff that we're doing now, looking at content workflow and how you can use AI to improve your team's output. Anyway, I'd love to help. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com is how you can find me. But for now, please enjoy my chat with Mya Doelling from the IOC. Very happy to welcome Mya Doelling. She is from the IOC, Senior Partnership Manager, Purpose-Led Partnerships Lead. Mya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean. Very happy to be here.
Not a problem at all. I always start trying to find out people's sports business origin stories. What about yourself? How did you get into the world of sports business?
It's a very long story that I'll try to keep as short as possible.
No, that's okay. We like the twists and turns and knowing how people got to where they got to. So that's fine.
Fantastic. Well, I grew up as the daughter of a track and field coach, and he started off, my first track meet myself was at 2 years old. And so by the time, I was almost 10, I knew which Olympics I wanted to run in and was very passionate about that. And unfortunately, I was diagnosed with leukemia when I was 10, but I happened at the time through different series of events, I'd become pen pals with an American track and field star named Marion Jones. And she was about to be the star of the Sydney 2000 Games.
Up against our very own Kathy Freeman. They were big rivals on the track.
Huge rivalry. And it was an amazing competitors. And I did the Make-A-Wish Foundation program as a cancer patient. And I got to go to the Sydney Olympics with my entire family, which completely opened my eyes to the power of the Olympic movement. And so after that, through different fundraising that I was doing for Make-A-Wish, they nominated me to be a torchbearer for the Salt Lake Games. And that just hooked me on to the Olympics for life. And so when I went to undergrad university, I went to Harvard undergrad. And so I thought at the time I wanted to be a sports agent. And so I did an internship at Octagon under their agent who was working with Michael Phelps. And at that time, this was after the Beijing 2008 Games, Michael really wanted to start a foundation. And so I helped them develop what his foundation was going to become. And so that was my first job out of university, was being the director of his foundation right before the London 2012 Games, which was absolutely incredible.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Michael Phelps, the GOAT in many eyes, and it's pretty hard to argue against it. But also, do you think, again, your background and your lived experience sort of drew you towards that foundation, that charity work, and sort of it was your life experience to know what it's like and the impact that it has that sort of drew you to that role?
Absolutely. I think I'm absolutely the product of how amazing the platform of sport can impact lives and where kind of purpose sits at the heart of this. And so having my own experience of sport and specifically the Olympics changing my life, it was an amazing opportunity to use Michael and his platform to do the same through his foundation. But that was my first job in the world of sport.
And that's amazing to also be working for and with someone like Michael Phelps. And there's lots of athletes that want to do good and set up foundations. What was Michael's sort of intent and want behind the foundation himself?
Absolutely. So he wanted to give people the same opportunities he had to learn how to swim. Certainly in the US, but I do know it's a global issue. Water safety and drowning, especially for children, is really scary and a massive challenge. And so we actually worked with the same woman that taught Michael Phelps how to swim to create a water safety program designed just as Michael trained himself. And we were able to build partnerships with organizations to get that program out there and teach children, not only in the US, but globally, how to swim.
And then when you from working with Michael and the foundation, you moved into a different role and a wider role in the sort of music and sports space with United Entertainment Group. Was that a concerted decision to sort of widen your skill set and sort of look at the wider piece of sport?
That's exactly right. So following the London Games, and I had been doing a lot more, again, creating partnerships with various commercial organizations as well as nonprofit organizations. And I really wanted to continue to hone my skills in that. So I went back to business school to get an MBA to really understand why commercial partners are involved in the world of sport, what sports partnerships do as part of their overall business model. And then that's what I really started to focus on. So at United Entertainment Group, I was really looking at working with different brands and consulting them on how sport can really help them achieve some of their marketing objectives, and then negotiating those partnerships with the NFL, the NBA, and then even got into the world of fashion with New York Fashion Week, but really trying to understand what both sides of partnerships were trying to get out of that relationship from a marketing perspective.
I think it's really important. I've spoken to a few people that are either working on the commercial side, and they do look back at that agency experience of working on the brand side and not on the sports side, not on the rights holder side, as like you sort of said, like going back to university, like getting your MBA on what the brands are looking for. Was that something that you found, and also the fact that you got to work with multiple sports to sort of see how the NFL operated and how Olympics operated and NBA and those kind of things? Was that sort of the thing that you sort of took away from that experience?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I used the opportunity of my MBA to try to explore as much as possible the various similarities and differences between sports properties. And so I was there, I think partnerships within major leagues in the United States is very different than working at a team. It's very different than working with an athlete, and it's extremely different than the world of the Olympics. And so I was able to really understand the role that brands play in as part of the sports ecosystem, but also what they want differently out of these different types of properties. And so I think being able to play with that a bit for a few years, then when I came back to the world of the Olympics, I was able to really start understanding how to translate what these commercial partners are trying to achieve when they make these significant commitments in the world of sport.
And so 5 years ago, around 2019, you came into the Olympic family with the IOC in a global partnerships role. What was that initial remit coming into that role, and what was it like? Again, coming from agency side, working with multiple to the big beast that is the IOC. What was that initial role and that, I guess, that onboarding period to understand what the IOC really does?
That's a great question. I think the onboarding period is, especially when you're coming into something as global and as massive as the Olympic movement. I think I admittedly did not know what I was getting myself into and the scale at which we would be working. And so I, especially with my role, my agency role, I was hired in to manage two of the commercial partners that the IOC has with Procter & Gamble and Omega. Having my background in consulting and passion for the world of purpose, when I joined the organization, I saw that there was an opportunity to really create a commercial strategy of how we better integrate our commercial partners into the IOC's overall mission, which is to build a better world through sport, and how to do that in a really structured way, looking at all of the different stakeholders that are involved in the Olympic movement. So I think a lot of people don't know that the Olympic movement is not just the Olympic Games. There are athletes, of course, there's fans, but there's National Olympic Committees, there's organizing committees, there's international federations, all who are working together, and broadcasters as well, all of who are working together to try to not only deliver impactful Olympic Games every 2 years, but there's multiple other entities like the Youth Olympic Games and esports that we operate as well. And so understanding that there's so many ways that our partners can come in and work with us and help us grow and do more with our mission to really deliver impact everywhere, every day. There needs to be a lot of structure around that in order to do that well. And so I saw that as an opportunity to create more of that structure as the IOC itself was redefining and redesigning how we deliver on our mission. And so that's what I did over the course of probably the first 2 years I was at the IOC, was understanding what are the different kind of purpose ambitions that our commercial partners have, and how do those line up with what the Olympic movement hopes to do.
So you're obviously very purpose focused. That's obviously now your role, and it's what the opportunity that you saw. There'll be other people listening that go, well, we're still in the partnerships. It's very transactional, and hey, I'm getting that logo, and how many times is that logo getting put out, and how many pieces of collateral are getting done, and how big is the sign? How do you help make that change to, I guess you're still going to have some of those deliverables, but sort of align it to what, like you said, the mission and the goals of the organization? What was that, I guess, those first couple of conversations to move from that transactional approach to, I guess, driving that purpose?
I think there's certainly a couple of different factors at play, because of course the base of a traditional sports sponsorship is, of course, all of those standard elements of the tickets that you're getting and the number of logo placements that you have and the rights that you exercise at an Olympics or with the Olympic movement itself. But I think one of the things that we are seeing and what we have been seeing over the last few years is not only the expectation of consumers and audiences to really understand, why are these organizations coming together? Why is this happening beyond just that transactional relationship? But also, what is the impact that all of this is having, and to be able to say that in a meaningful way. And so I think from a marketing perspective, as these are marketing partnerships, we need to address what our stakeholders are trying to achieve, especially as part of their overall marketing mix. So I think one of the things that we've seen in the conversations that we've had with partners is purpose is really a key pillar to these partnerships now. I think it's one of the things that we design these programs around, and it has since changed much of our strategy, that our mission is to really make sure that our partnerships are achieving greater impact through the power of sport, because this is, I think, a platform unlike any other, and the Olympics is the greatest stage unlike any other. So there's a lot of power around using it to demonstrate what your organization does and why it's doing it. And then similarly, I think now that a lot of organizations are really focusing on how to connect with Gen Z, we understand that over 3/4 of Gen Z consumers say they want to buy from brands that stand for a greater purpose. So how do we communicate what we do and do it in a way that's authentic, impactful, and long lasting? And that's what we're trying to do now in everything we do.
Absolutely. And they've got a very high threshold of knowing when they're when it's not authentic. Like, they go, you can't just say that you're sustainable or say that you're for the climate. Well, we've got to see it. And so it was a bit chicken and egg. And again, I love your feedback because you were sort of on the brand side and now you're on the right side. Normally these things are, we're going to take the change, but it sort of seems to be coming from both sides. Both the rights holders want to do the right thing. They want to be sustainable. They want to support climate action and those kind of things. But also it is something that brands are now coming to you and saying, well, we'd love to work with the IOC. How can you help us with our sustainability message? Or we want to make sure that this partnership, has a zero impact on the environment. Is that how you've sort of seen over the past 10 years, that it sort of has been something that's a little bit resistant, but for the most part, it's sort of in the KPIs for most organizations these days?
It's certainly in the KPIs, but I think in order to do it well and to do it authentically and to have that impact, especially at the scale at which we're doing it and the scale of the organizations we're working with, I think that's why it's taken almost 5 years for us to understand how to structure this and activate it in a way that achieves the results that our consumers are expecting, as well as our partners, are setting their goals against. And so, again, I think as part of this process with the existing commercial partners that we had to really sit down with them over the course of a year to understand where have their organizations really committed to on purpose, and how has that impacted their operations, and what is truly the body of work that they have in committing to that. And similarly at the IOC, we are an organization that could do everything and anything. So where are we as an organization really putting the stake in the ground and saying, as the Olympic movement, this is where we're trying to have impact through the power of sport, and then to match those with those right fit organizations. And so again, it's not something that can just take, a week of a couple meetings. It's really trying to understand where that overlap is and what are those few best opportunities that can, achieve the positive impact that is expected of organizations of this size.
And does that mean that effectively there's more, I don't know if I say there's less work previously, but there's more work on partner alignment in getting, that you have to be in lockstep with your partners because you really can't execute. It sort of falls out of your structure. Is that sort of what you've been talking about, setting up that infrastructure to be able to do it, to be able to see where someone is stepping off the path a little bit?
It's not even just being in lockstep with partners, it's being in lockstep with all of the different parts of that organization. So I think, again, traditionally, these partnerships were two marketing departments talking to each other, and that's it. And now we have, for both organizations, executives from our ESG teams, our sustainability teams, our HR departments, and all of them needing to work in lockstep because we're all trying to look at impact in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We're also, as an organization, looking at the games that just happened in Paris all the way through to Brisbane and now Salt Lake after that. And so how do you map out the different opportunities that each organization can work together, given the commitments that we have? And it can't just be the marketing individuals just planning themselves. So it's a massive amount of work coordination.
No, exactly. That's what I was saying. So it becomes a big logistical project because you're effectively a sustainability and a climate action activation arm for the company, and that's part of the sponsorship and the purpose of what you're trying to do. And you're not just, yes, you'll see our logo when the bikes whiz by, but then like you're saying, it's both ways. The partner should be able to come and say, oh, we can help with that piece, but that's our, that's what our sustainability teams. So that's the bit that makes it a lot more complex.
Absolutely. But I also think, again, that's what then creates opportunities that set the standard in sports moving forward. So, again, I started building this strategy over 5 years ago. And of course, over that time, we had 2 COVID Olympics. And so I think now that created an entirely different environment in the way that the athletes engaged with the Olympics and experienced them, but fans as well. And so I think all of this really and all of this work of really bringing purpose to the heart of these partnerships, we had the opportunity at Paris 2024 this summer to truly show the world what we're working on and the direction that we're heading. And so that resulted in programs like the Olympic and Paralympic Family Space, which was the first of its kind nursery that was provided for athletes who had children of diapering age at the games. These athletes are spending weeks, months, years on the road. And at the Olympic Games, they're there for 3+ weeks. And they are more than just what they perform on the field of play. And so there's more, I think, that athletes need to do to prepare themselves for competition. And so actually providing a space where they didn't have to compromise seeing their family during that time, and they're able to then focus more on their sport because they're not missing their children, they're not missing their support systems. That was the first nursery that's ever been done in sport, and it had a tremendous amount of impact. That was years in the making of understanding what our athletes need, and that where the IOC fits into that position, where our partners like P&G and their Pampers brand can provide that support and make a space in the Olympic Village that is special and unique, and the ways that the National Olympic Committees, the athletes, and the village, the Olympic and Paralympic space itself, all had to work together to create that space.
Yeah, and I guess that was just for me, the bit I'm interested in is, I guess, the genesis of that idea in, you've got pillars for athlete welfare, and it's always been hard to go to major meets and being a mother and, having small children and having to be separated. Was that something that sort of, everyone when they're running sports or events have got this list of things that they would like to fix? Is that sort of part of the things that you're looking at to say, these are things I can fix? How can partners, bridge that gap and make these things happen?
The IOC has an athletes department as well as an athletes commission that we are constantly engaging to understand what are the needs of the athletes and where we and our partners can help support more. And so one of the newest members of our athletes commission, Allison Felix, who is a 7-time Olympic champion and a mother of 2 now, she really championed bringing this idea to the IOC to say, what is an opportunity where we can start addressing the needs of parents and parent athletes, not only at the Olympic Games, but at the Olympic movement. And so I think from multiple conversations with her as an advocate, as well as the IOC Athletes Commission as a voice for many of the athletes, that's where the idea started to come to life. Of course, they came to our department to understand what could a partner look like who could come in and help support this space. And I think it was a very natural fit for P&G and their longstanding support of families and Olympic families to say, is this something that you might be able to work with us on? And I think it was an immediate yes from them. And then you get into the complexities of how to bring that to life. And so that's what took a fair amount of time to understand, how do you really make a viable space that is accessible, not only to athletes, their families and partners, but also works for the Olympics and the Paralympics.
So as you're going through, both rolling out change and really pushing, purpose-led partnerships, in that they're not the same as traditional sponsorships, and a lot of sponsorships are very much, hey, how does this affect my business bottom line? Is that a pushback that you get? Hey, how many more widgets or how many more things am I going to sell as part of this partnership? How do you both reframe that question, but then also, I've seen sustainability programs and that do provide massive cost savings and those kind of things, but is it a bit more outside the box? What are the metrics you look for to present back to a partner to say, this is why I should be leading with purpose?
That's a great question. I think it's very different for different partners. I think there are some organizations that have more traditional marketing KPIs that we're able to address those and how you promote a lot of these programs, whether that is through content creation, in earned media, how those campaigns are in working with different talent and influencers to promote those. And we're able to really show a lot of success in the engagement that the public has with these campaigns. There are other organizations that have much more focus on employee engagement and the way that employees can give back and feel that they're giving back, which are incredible programs as well. There are organizations, especially again at the scale and size of the organizations that we work with, are trying to engage 100 different markets and engage their employees in all of those different markets. And so we're able to provide those touch points and all of the 206 national organizing committees that we work with, and being able to have a regional impact. And so again, we work really closely with setting those KPIs with those partners. But I think overall what we've seen, and people were, I think initially when, you start talking about purpose and you think it ends up kind of being these fluffy numbers and feel good, is no, there is a business impact. And from our own experience, we're seeing that companies that really are harnessing the power of sport and purpose achieve better financial results. They're attracting and retaining more talent. They're building loyal customer relationships. And as they keep doubling down on this and growing these programs, they're engaging even more and having better results. And so I know that from some of the research that we're seeing, I think it's 91% of businesses believe that purpose-led sponsorships are performing better than traditional sponsorships. So knowing that, how do you do that in the right way, the most authentic way, in a way that you can grow and build and evolve for years and years and years, which are the terms of many of our partner relationships.
I think it's true what you said there, especially that employee engagement piece. Like, employees don't automatically just share your latest campaign because they work there. Like, they care, though, they will share the campaign if it hits them and it hits them emotionally and they show pride in where they are. Like, that is a massive metric that everyone is standing up to. And then the same for your customers. If they go, I really like what this brand is doing in the space because of what they're doing, and it's back to that point of Gen Z and what they want to buy and work with brands that do care and do show it. So it's the data is there, and I think engagement is getting harder and harder to get across all of the different platforms. You need something to cut through. Is this, something you're obviously passionate about? Is this where you think the future of sports partnership sort of lies, in that crossover of delivering impact using sport where it can be used, but also having that purpose behind it?
I don't think it's a complete catch-all. I think it really depends on the organizations. If the organization has purpose at its core, this is an amazing way, and sport is an amazing platform for them to use to continue doing that work. Not every organization has purpose as one of its key pillars. And if an organization is doing something right and they're doing it well, again, sport is an amazing platform for them to show it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that purpose has to sit at the heart of it. I think it really is a mechanism for organizations who have strong commitments and long-term commitments around purpose to then activate that in a impactful way. I think for someone who has a lot of passion for it, I would love for every partnership to be purpose-driven, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the case if that's not what an organization is committed to, because it literally is an exercise where the entire organization needs to play its role in delivering on that purpose. So I think as we're seeing, especially in the different audiences that we want to continue to attract, I think they want to just see authenticity in everything that an organization does. If you are best at this, do it. But don't tell me that you want to be something and then not fully have your entire organization act in that manner. So I think from a global sports property perspective, there's a lot of opportunity, and where the IOC purpose is embedded in our mission. It's embedded in our entire roadmap as we look 5-10 years into the future. Where can our partners help us on that journey is what we're aiming to do.
It's definitely a massive point of difference as an organisation if you have that strong purpose, especially as we were talking before, that so many of the partners are either looking to achieve goals that can be very, purpose focused around climate, sustainability, gender equality, all of those topics that are hot for them. And so if you can embrace them, it does sort of set you aside in the market. One thing I did want to ask you, I've been asking my guests sort of what's in your toolkit? What are the things that you use either to help set this infrastructure up, to track what you're trying to do? So it could be a tool that you use in sales or measurement or reporting, or how to keep your team upbeat. Is there some tools in your toolkit that you find making your job easier?
I think there's a couple. I think, again, having a massive global sporting event every 2 years is a great tool for us to have touch points regularly to show the world what we're working on and what we're trying to achieve. I think very tangibly, the IOC as an organization, as an owner of the games, and as a leader of the entire Olympic movement, we need to demonstrate the impact that we're having everywhere, every day. And so we actually created, through our Olympism 365 team, a measurement tool to understand at any given point what is the impact that we're having in every region of the globe. And what we're trying to do is then to understand where are our different stakeholders helping us in the process. And so I think as we continue to build out measurement tools like that, and we can really hone in on where our partners are coming in, growing and amplifying what we're doing, then we can also demonstrate to them what is the impact that you are having specifically within the Olympic movement that only helps them double down on what they want to do with us. So I think these measurement and impact tools are critical.
Is that like your North Star effectively? Effectively be looking at that metric, and it gives you, gives the whole org, because it has to be a whole organization sort of method to be able to do it?
It's an ambitious North Star that I think it's hard to have every single part of an organization have the same measurement indicators and things that they're tracking. But I think, again, if we as an organization can come together, and the Olympic movement can come together to start understanding tangibly the story that we want to tell, that would be an amazing, amazing benefit.
And like you said there, you've got every 2 years you've got an Olympics, and touch wood, most of the time fans will be there. And I've been lucky enough to talk to different people who work at those major events. What is it like going from season to season, from Paris, and then you got the next one, and then you're planning LA 28's coming up on the horizon? Is the turnaround of, this is what worked at Paris, and now we're starting to look at what we can adjust, what we can do, because you've got that 2 weeks, or there's the 4 weeks with the Paralympics as well. That's really super intense, but you've got the 18 months to 2 years to 6 years in the lead up to it. It's a fascinating for me, because it's not like you're in the NBA or you're in the NFL and you've got 18 weeks and you're planning every week. You've got 14 Super Bowls in a row, which is what the Olympics is like. What's the plan? What's the planning from Paris to to LA? If we just look summer to summer, in working with your partners on how we can take it to the next level.
I think it's an amazing opportunity, and I think people tend to think that, it is almost 2 years that you have to start planning. But, again, we're already looking at, the 2030 games in the French Alps in Brisbane, and speaking with different organizations while they're at different stages of their development. And so even to look at from Paris to LA, we already seem behind. And I think that there's a lot of things that we need to really quickly digest, debrief, and say, how do we build and grow that in the future? Because you'd be surprised how much coordination is involved and how much time that can take to get things implemented off the ground at the scale that we need to do it. So LA, we're in full swing planning and trying to understand where we can evolve these programs, but it's exciting to see and take these learnings that we have from these past games to understand, how do you bring that to the context of the United States? How do you bring that even in it feels like tomorrow, but in a year to Italy? And so again, it's a lot of these stakeholders all coming together and putting our heads together to say, how do we keep doing this bigger, better, stronger.
And it's like everyone who works in sport, they just think, oh, you don't do anything for the 2 years in between. You're just busy for those 2 weeks. Like all of us who do work in sport know that the off season, and for you, it's when the athletes aren't doing the 2 weeks, is almost just as busy because you're, like you said, you're managing 4 different games at 4 different stages, and that logistic nightmare of local organising committee, local federations, different states and cities. So it must be an exciting role, but it must have your head spinning sometimes.
Absolutely, but this is what we signed up for.
No, exactly. Well, I really do appreciate you coming on. I want to get to the Sports Geek Closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
I do. I think for anybody who hasn't been to the United States, the Penn Relays, I think, are largely the greatest track and field meet that there ever is, and certainly was one of my first sports events that I ever attended.
Absolutely terrific. You would have been a lot of sports events in your time, and the sports food scene has evolved over the years. Do you have a favorite food memory or a go-to food at a sports event?
I think I'll never turn down a hot dog. It's a great sports food.
Exactly. For the most part, you can't get them wrong, and that's where you just want. If you want to go safe, you want to get something right, then you make it wrong. Now, working in a global role in a global organisation with Olympics being organised all around the world, what's the first app you open in the morning?
I think, unfortunately, it's my calendar and trying to understand what I have on tap for the day, but especially when you're dealing with multiple time zones and throughout the day, you want to make sure you're not missing something.
Yeah, it is a case of do you check your inbox or the different WhatsApp chats that are bouncing off, and it's like, can I just have my coffee first, please? So it is a fun one. Is there someone that you follow? It might be a colleague, it might be an author or someone you follow on social media that the podcast listeners should follow, and why?
To be honest, I think the podcast listeners should follow athletes, especially Olympians. That's the only way you can really get to know what they're passionate about and what drives them to give literally their all to sport. And so I'm thinking athletes like Ilona Maher, Simone Biles, Allison Felix. I think they're incredible athletes that, don't just follow them during the Olympics, really follow them on their entire Olympic journey. So find an Olympian to follow.
Absolutely. And then you do get, to find the different parts of their lives and not just the things that they excel at an Olympics, and also some of the terrific social good that they're doing because it's something that they're passionate about. Lastly, and I always ask this from a point of view of, personally, and you can say from professionally, but what social media platform is your MVP?
Admittedly, I really miss Vine, but I think that
that's a throwback,
right?
Yeah, that's
I miss it every day. But I think right now it's probably Instagram. But I'm hoping that something new and engaging and uplifting comes out, and I'm hoping some really smart people are working on the next big thing.
Hopefully, because there is a tendency for all the things we are talking about, social good and purpose. Unfortunately, sometimes there's just not really good places on the internet for that to live and thrive. And I mean, we do see, and that's where you do get that cut through. And then back to what we said before, when you do have heartwarming, emotional, hits you right between the eyes and between the heart, like it does work. But unfortunately, that's not how most of the platforms are geared these days.
Unfortunately, but I have hope that we're going to get our new thing, because I think people are yearning for some hope, to be uplifted and to really feel connected to other people. And so again, I think that's what a lot of this purpose work can do is provide a little bit of that understanding of where we can truly continue to be positive and work together and bring good results that make people happy.
Absolutely. And that's a terrific way to finish off the podcast. I really do appreciate you coming on the podcast. If there are people who have listened to this episode and want to reach out and say thank you, which is what I encourage them to do, what's the best platform for them to do that for you?
On LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great way to connect with me.
Terrific. Well, appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on the podcast. Hopefully we connect way before Brisbane 32, but if that is the time. But thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Sean, and I hope you have a great day.
Looking to help your digital or sponsorship team? Book in for a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan to help your team level up. Book now at sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain.
Thanks again to Mya. We will have links to Mya's LinkedIn in the show notes. You can find the show notes at sportsgeekhq.com/398. As we discussed, purpose and partnerships and sponsorship and developing that is a growing area in sport. And I think Mya and what she's doing at the IOC is definitely one to follow and definitely connect with. Before I wrap up, I just want to share a little bit of what I've been working on. And you might have seen, if you do subscribe to the weekly Sports Geek news, that we've slowly started to add back some links and some articles that I read and find. Why did they go, and what was the problem, and what have I currently been working on? Well, the problem was, I guess, the method that I was using to find, curate, and decide what goes into that newsletter sort of fell apart. There's no sort about it. It did fall apart because the methods that I was using were relying on Twitter, really, is what we're going to call it. We're relying on Twitter for people to be sharing, and also when I would share something on Twitter, people would be clicking. And over the past 18 months, it's not just me, but we're also seeing it with a lot of clients. There's not a lot of traffic and not a lot of clicking happening on Twitter. So I didn't have any means to, and there's less sharing. So people are sharing less, clicking on less. So I had no means to find what people were clicking on and sharing, and no means to know what was working. So how did I solve it? Well, I ended up having to build my own curation system. So the problem was that I could not find the content that I wanted to share, and I was reading less as a result. And so I wanted to solve it for myself, but then also have that flow-on effect that it would solve it for what Sports Geek News becomes, and what I do, which is share articles and opinions on articles. So I started playing around with no-code tools like Make, as well as some of the AI agents, Claude and ChatGPT, and I bundled them together and connected them to rate and review links. And so I was starting to get a better idea of what were the sports business articles, one I would like to read, and that I would like to share. And then for the first time in 15 years, I started coding again. So before Sports Geek, I was a geek. So I was a coder for 15 years and wrote in multiple languages, but I had not coded anything in over 15 years, other than maybe a snippet of HTML and some WordPress posts. Haven't really done much code, and I got to pair programming with Claude. And you can see what the results of that if you go to reads.sportsgeekhq.com. It's effectively a Reddit-like interface of the articles that this curation system has discovered. And so you can go there, you can click around, you can find an article, click on it, it's got tags. If you log in, you can upvote some articles, and you can even submit your own articles. So I'd love your feedback. It's been a fun project to develop something that delivers a lot of value for me without the high touch required by myself or my team. So the system, it's been now running for about 10 days or so, is doing a pretty good job of curating and finding the right articles that I want to read and ones that I want to share. And so if you go in and sign up and log in, both of you can vote things up, but then you'll also get the daily email recap that I get that will then funnel into our weekly Sports Geek news. So it's been a fun project. If it's something you'd like to discuss to understand how we did it, what we did, why we did it, because I think there's really a lot of use cases, and we're starting to develop a few use cases that deliver instant commercial value for the team or league without the constant problem of I need resources to do that. And so this is the bit where we can sort of use those shortcuts that AI is offering to further. Like one thing that we excel at is helping digital teams outperform their size. This is a cheat code. So if you'd like that cheat code, please get in touch. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. I'd love to help you and your team deliver more for your fans. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Do you get Sports Geek news? Sean Callanan analyzes the latest sports business articles for you weekly. Sign up at sportsgeekhq.com. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.